She was a 16-year-old with a promising future.
She was a very ambitious teen. She had goals.
She was going to go to law school.
But she disappeared instead.
She just walked off campus having a casual conversation on her phone.
And was never seen or heard from again.
She's missing, and the clock is ticking.
Could we be dealing with a homicide?
If you don't locate a child within the first 24 hours, those cases don't end well.
The search for the missing teen will expose horrific secrets.
This is extreme manipulation.
He knew the right things to say.
It made my skin crawl. She told nobody.
But in the end, someone will.
Jacksonville is a really beautiful place. It's really community-oriented.
Christmas time in Jacksonville is a very exciting time of the year. The majority of people decorate their homes. Businesses are decorated with Christmas lights and all types of festive things to celebrate.
But that Wednesday afternoon, the family of one Jacksonville teenager is in no mood to celebrate.
Jacksonville 911, what's the emergency?
The caller says that her niece, 16-year-old Ayanna Sawyer, didn't come home after school.
Her sister reported that she did not get on the bus, and her family immediately became concerned. And one of the victim's aunts called the police.
I don't understand why she wasn't on the bus.
Did you ask your sister,
Why she thought she didn't know?
It was out of character for her to just leave and not contact anybody or tell of her whereabouts.
She's an animal student, an undecided student.
This is someone who's really dedicated to school. She's a good student.
Can her sister confirm she actually made it to school today, though?
Oh, yeah, she went to school, yes, ma'am.
When her daughter didn't come home, Ayanna's mom called the school and learned that she had left at lunch.
And Ayanna never came back.
She immediately became concerned and it told her sister to call the police.
Do you think it's foul play?
Ma'am, I have no idea. Something is definitely wrong.
Ayanna Sawyer was destined for great things.
She was a bright student. She had a very promising future.
She was clearly serious about her studies.
And her family expected her to go far.
She was a rising star. In fact, they called her their little lawyer because she was hopefully going to go to law school.
She had goals, and she knew that there was a world out there that she could put her name on.
And for all Ayanna's drive and ambition, she was equally devoted to her family.
She was very family-oriented. She loved her family.
She was very close with her mother and her aunts. Her mother had 4 sisters that were all in town. They were a close-knit, wonderful family.
But no one was closer to Ayanna than her little sister, Michaela.
Ayanna was that person Michaela looked up to, the type of sister that wanted to help guide her.
In fact, everyone who knew Ayanna loved her.
There were so many people who loved her. They loved her bubbly, vibrant, beautiful spirit.
And that included many of the boys at her high school.
She had boyfriends before, but nothing very serious.
At 16, you're trying to navigate and understand your role in the world. She was still trying to determine who she was.
During that age, you are getting this new sense of yourself.
And she didn't want a high school romance to get in the way of her dreams.
She was scheduled to graduate early from Terry Parker High School.
She had her sights set on college and knew how important the next few years of her life were.
She had a bright future, very smart young lady, had the world in front of her.
But now Ayanna's family is terrified that something has happened to her.
After repeated calls, they didn't know where she was. And that's when the panic set in.
Not knowing what else to do, Ayanna's aunt calls 911.
She's an animal student, undecided student, all that, no problems. And we just not like her at all.
It's every parent's nightmare. All kind of things are running through your mind.
So you feel that this is out of character?
The investigators are going to question that. Are there any problems going on in the home? Is there any kind of contention that she's going through with anybody in the family, which would make them possibly conclude that she may have just run away?
But Ayana's aunt insists that her niece wouldn't have run away.
She come home every day because she got responsibility.
Including one very big responsibility.
She had gone to the doctor a couple weeks prior.
And he's given Ayana some potentially life-changing news.
She was pregnant.
16-year-old Ayana Sawyer was looking forward to graduating early from her Jacksonville, Florida high school.
She was very good in school.
She excelled. She was making straight A's.
She had goals. She wanted to be a lawyer.
But now, 6 days before Christmas, she's suddenly gone missing.
Ayana left school that afternoon, and no one has seen her since.
This is not like her at all.
This young girl is not your expected runaway, troubled youth that we see too often.
However, there is one thing about Ayana that could be a factor in her disappearance.
Ayana actually was pregnant.
She's 5 months up. She's due 4/12.
Later that evening, when Ayana's mother meets with the detectives, she says the pregnancy had taken everyone by surprise, including Ayana.
That she decided to keep the baby?
Oh, yes.
She was initially shocked, but she became excited. She was a very ambitious teen.
Even though she was still 16, she was excited to be a mother.
So in her eyes, she was still gonna go after her goals and embrace motherhood.
And she wouldn't have to raise the child alone.
She had the support of her family.
Ayana's mother said that she and Ayana's sister, as well as her aunts, were all ready to pitch in and help with the baby.
What about the father?
Well, I don't know.
Ayana's mom explains that Ayana hasn't told her much about the baby's father.
Do you know a name?
She wouldn't say.
Now police are questioning whether Ayana is even in any type of danger at all, or if she decided to run off with her boyfriend because she's in love.
The following morning, the detectives head to Ayana's school.
They start by talking to the school administrators.
They say it was a normal school day up until around 11 a.m.
She says that after lunch, Ayana failed to show up to any of her classes.
This young girl simply walked off and disappeared.
In fact, the school's security cameras recorded her leaving.
She wasn't running. She just walked off, acting rather casual.
But as she neared the exit, another student caught up with her.
The school officials identified the other student as Ayana's younger sister, Michaela.
You could not hear verbally what was being said, but you could certainly tell the sister was having this animated conversation with her victim.
You could see Ayana's sister shaking her head. It looked like she was warning her, in a sense.
But if that was the case, Ayana shrugged off the warning.
She just walked off campus having a casual conversation on her phone.
To the detectives, it looked like she might be arranging to meet with someone.
Pulling Ayana's phone records would likely reveal who she was talking to. But the detectives suspect there might be a faster way.
Detectives decide to talk to Ayana's friends to get more information about where she possibly could be.
Her friend group had nothing but wonderful things to say about her. A very serious student, a reliable friend, somebody that they shared things with.
And as the detectives suspected, Ayana had shared some things with them too.
Some of her friends knew what was going on with her in her pregnancy,
including the identity of the father.
They find out that she had a secret boyfriend that she called Jose.
Is this somebody here from school?
No, he's not in high school.
We were told from the friends that this Jose is an older man, maybe even in his 20s. He had long black hair and he was Hispanic.
I think he was an older kid from her neighborhood that she was seeing back in the summer.
Her friend said it was kind of an on and off relationship.
But her friends suspect Jose was who Ayanna was going to meet when she walked off campus the day before.
She was like really excited.
According to her friends, Jose had committed to Ayanna and the baby.
She said that he finally come through.
And what does she mean by that?
Like they were gonna be together, you know, and raise the kid.
There was no reason to think that this was anything more than just a young girl walking off to meet her boyfriend.
But when the detectives talk to Ayanna's sister Michaela, she's reluctant to tell them more.
Ayanna is very close to her younger sister. Ayanna was that person Michaela looked up to.
She had a real sense of loyalty to her sister.
Look, we're not trying to get your sister into trouble. We're here to help.
Your mother's really worried about him.
And she eventually admits Ayanna is seeing an older guy from the neighborhood.
Michaela tells police that her sister was talking to another boy.
But according to Michaela, his name is Kareem Dixon, not Jose.
He was possibly romantically involved with Ayanna.
So why is Ayanna telling people his name's Jose?
I'm not sure.
But based on what Michaela tells them, Ayanna had good reason to protect Kareem's identity.
Kareem was 20 years old.
When you're talking about a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, that's a child with a full-grown adult.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of Ayanna Sawyer have learned that the 16-year-old has been dating a 20-year-old named Kareem Dixon.
Now they're wondering, is Kareem possibly the father of her unborn child?
And if so, was Kareem who Ayanna was talking to when she walked off her high school campus and disappeared?
Detectives have to consider the possibility.
The most important thing right now is not the fact that he's 20 years old and she's 16, but the fact that she is missing, and their objective right now is to find her.
So police naturally go to him to see if he knows anything about what's going on.
But when the detectives bring Kareem in for questioning, he appears confused.
Missing? No. What do you mean she's missing?
She left in the middle of school yesterday, and no one has seen her since.
Kareem says he hasn't talked to her in several days.
So you do know her?
I mean, yeah.
Once they establish that Kareem had a relationship with her, they're going to dig deeper.
Kareem tells the detectives he met Ayanna while they were both waiting for their younger siblings at a bus stop.
They exchange Snapchat and social media.
In today's society, that's what a lot of young people do. They don't give you their telephone number, but they'll tell you, hit me up on Snapchat or whatever.
But the online flirting had soon led to something else.
They were communicating via social media, and the conversations would be sexual, which led to a sexual encounter.
I know it was wrong, man.
So what'd you do about it?
I ghosted her.
Kareem said that after they had sex, he cut off communication with Ayanna.
He also says he had no idea she was pregnant.
She's about 5 months along.
It could be the other guy.
Kareem believes that she was involved with someone else.
But does that mean that Kareem isn't the Jose guy Ayanna told her friends about?
The question is Kareem bringing this up to try to take the attention off of himself?
So where were you yesterday afternoon?
I was at my mom's place.
Kareem said that he'd taken the bus to his mom's house, which is on the opposite side of town.
Kareem also gives the detectives his Snapchat handle and Ayanna's.
A lot of young people use Snapchat simply because they can send a risque picture or a risque text message. Once it's read, it's going to disappear. But here's the thing. Once you hit send, it never disappears. It may disappear from your telephone, but it never disappears.
A lot of people who use Snapchat are under the impression that when you send a message, it just vanishes, right? but there's actually always an electronic imprint that is left behind.
What's done in the dark will come to light.
And when detectives review Ayanna's electronic records, what they find confirms Kareem's account of their relationship.
There were a lot of flirtatious messages, eventually becoming sexually explicit, up until the time where they actually hooked up. After that, all communication ceased.
But detectives also find another set of messages between Ayanna and someone she only refers to as Q.
From the content of the messages, it was apparent to detectives that this mysterious Q person was the father of Ayanna's baby.
He was telling her he loved her. He was telling her he was going to help her have a second baby once she turned 18. He wanted her to finish high school, but they would run off together and have babies.
However, some of the other messages between Ayanna and Q raise an immediate red flag for detectives.
Some of the messages said, "You're stuck with me until you die."
He would say that he loved her so much that if he had to, he would even kill her.
The detectives suspect that Q may actually be the mysterious boyfriend Ayanna's friends knew as Jose.
But unless they could identify him, they were no closer to finding Ayanna or finding out what happened to her.
It's not until over a week later, when Ayanna's mother brings Michaela into the station, that the detectives finally make a breakthrough.
Michaela finally decides to come forward with information that she's been holding back.
I didn't tell you something really important.
She said, "I'm carrying a horrible secret."
She tells them that there actually is another person she's been involved with.
Her sister was having an affair with her uncle.
And according to Michaela, he was the father of Ayanna's child.
10-year-old Ayanna Sawyer have just learned a horrifying secret from her little sister, Michaela.
Michaela said she knows who the father of Ayanna's unborn child is.
He was our uncle.
Michaela let the investigators know that it was actually her uncle.
His name is Jonathan Quiles.
He's married to their mother's sister, Jasmine.
But that's not even the full extent of the horrific secret Michaela's been hiding.
Michaela told detectives that both she and Ayanna were victims of sexual abuse at the hands of their uncle.
Michaela and Ayanna would spend a lot of time at Jasmine's house, just babysitting, helping out around the house.
We'd stay the night sometimes.
They would even sleep on the couch. It just became a normal thing for them.
But Michaela says her uncle's behavior was anything but normal.
She said her uncle was always telling them how much he liked them, or saying that they were growing into fine young women.
He was very manipulative. He knew the right things to say.
And one night, while Michaela was staying with her aunt and uncle, he made his intentions clear.
He came out in the middle of the night and snuck up onto the couch.
Keep your little secret.
I didn't like it, but I didn't know what to do.
It's not your fault.
While it took some days for her to get there, she had the bravery and the courage to come clean and say what she knew.
He said not to tell anyone.
A huge part of a predator's grooming process, too, is making it seem like this is something that only we share.
She's vulnerable. She'll fall for whatever you say.
Because your brain isn't fully developed at that time, it's something that can be easily manipulated. And it left Michaela in a very confusing place, feeling that this is wrong, but he says that this is love.
But according to Michaela, their illicit relationship had come to an abrupt end.
Michaela found out she was pregnant, and when Jonathan found out, he wasn't happy about it.
Under Florida law, a 15-year-old can't get an abortion without a legal guardian.
So Michaela's uncle had come up with an alternative.
He had her take pills so she would have a miscarriage.
I didn't want to take him, but he made me.
Please. I don't care what you want. I ain't going to jail for you.
He actually hit her and then forced her to take them in front of him.
After taking the pills, Michaela did have a miscarriage.
And the same thing happened to Ayanna?
Yeah.
Michaela says that Ayanna told her about the relationship that she had with their uncle.
But according to Michaela, Ayanna didn't want anyone to know about their illicit relationship.
When it comes to grooming, people use manipulation and coercion to gain power and control, to where you start to protect the perpetrator. And Ayanna protected his identity.
Michaela had done the same.
They vowed to each other to keep it to themselves.
They just don't want to get in trouble. They think it's them against the world.
But then, Ayanna got pregnant.
Michaela says that Jonathan wanted Ayanna to terminate her pregnancy too.
But she wouldn't do it. She was in love with him. She really wanted to have his baby.
Did she say that?
That's what she told me.
Ayanna's mother also found proof.
She kept a diary. I found it on her computer after she disappeared.
There were entries in her diary about this man that she was in love with named Jose.
So, Jose, it's Jonathan.
Yeah, it's like a code.
And Ayanna's diary confirms her sister's claims.
The truth is coming out through this diary. This is a teenage girl who believes that she's in love.
Now the detectives suspect that love may have cost Ayanna her life.
Considering what Jonathan had done to Michaela, it's possible he had done even worse to keep the truth about Ayanna's pregnancy from coming out.
But while the detectives have no proof that Jonathan had anything to do with Ayanna's disappearance, Michaela's statement does give them enough to arrest Jonathan for sexual battery of a minor.
We had a victim who said what he was doing to her.
After talking to Michaela, the police go to Jonathan's house and take him into custody.
We're gonna go through a full-blown investigation because there was the allegations, okay?
When police arrest him, his wife, who is visibly pregnant at this point, is distraught.
She's learning that her husband has impregnated her 16-year-old niece.
At first, she can't believe it.
Is there a way that you all do forensics on whatever they presented as evidence to make sure it wasn't just made up?
But then she takes a pause and things are starting to actually click a little bit.
She tells detectives that Jonathan hadn't been sleeping well lately.
She felt something was off because Jonathan was really on edge.
But according to Jasmine, things had recently changed.
When she went missing, he was sleeping peacefully.
Do I think my husband is capable of any of this? No, I don't. But we have a missing piece of...
Jonathan Quiles had something to do with the disappearance of his 16-year-old niece, Ayanna Sawyer.
According to Ayanna's sister, Jonathan had been sexually abusing both teens. And he was the father of Ayanna's unborn child.
And now, a week after she disappeared, the detectives believe Ayanna is most likely dead.
As those days passed and there was no sighting of Ayanna, we knew there's a serious problem. We eventually declared it a homicide.
Police knew that maybe he could be responsible.
After taking Jonathan Quiles into custody, the detectives searched the house.
In a closet, the police found a 9mm handgun.
The detectives also returned to Ayanna's house and conduct a search of her room.
The detectives take some of her clothing from the laundry for DNA analysis.
Then, after conducting the searches, the detectives hauled Jonathan into the interrogation room.
How are you?
How you doing? I've had better days.
He did not look like he was concerned at all.
Jonathan claims he has nothing to hide.
Asked about Ayanna's pregnancy, He says he doesn't know who the father is, but he has a guess.
She was having a sexual relationship with a boy that she said that was 17 and turned out that he was 21 across the street.
But what Jonathan doesn't know is that detectives had already talked to Kareem and ruled him out.
And when the detectives confront Jonathan about how he's been abusing his nieces, he denies it.
That is absolutely absurd. No.
He stays calm, he's cool, as if everything that they're saying is completely untrue and they have no proof at all.
But the investigators do have proof.
They were looking on her computer, and so they're finding stuff that's implying a sexual relationship with you, almost like a love affair.
Jonathan insists that the diary entries are all made up.
They most likely forced her to say whatever they wanting her to say because
Who's forcing?
her mom.
Jonathan claims he was caught up in the drama between the two teenagers and their mom.
She needs attention in some form, and I hate to say that, I really do.
Right.
But so far, that's kind of how things has been playing out.
And he says that's all Ayanna's disappearance is. More teenage drama.
But he swears he has no idea where she is.
I can't give you any information I don't have.
He absolutely, categorically denied any involvement in her disappearance.
And he denies being the father of Ayanna's child just as vehemently.
I've never, ever, ever got out of line with this girl, ever.
Okay. So there would be no reason to have any of your DNA.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
He felt confident that you have nothing on me. You don't have a body, a person. You don't have DNA.
I'm not a monster.
Despite Jonathan's denials, the detectives place him under arrest for the sexual battery of a minor. And with Jonathan now in custody, the detectives come up with a plan to determine what happened to Ayanna.
One day after he was arrested, we wired up 2 separate inmates to engage him in conversation about the disappearance of Ayanna.
Then, while waiting to see if their informants can learn anything, the detectives search the auto salvage business where Jonathan works for any sign of Ayanna.
We weren't just looking for her body. We knew we had to find some evidence of maybe her backpack, maybe items in her backpack.
It's a massive space, like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
The detectives spend hours and hours scouring the abandoned vehicles.
It's a perfect place to get rid of a body.
There's always car crushing going on. There's front-end loaders driving around there.
And there's a constant stream of dumpsters hauled off to the local landfill.
So he could have put her in a bin that then ended up going to a landfill.
Unable to find any trace of Ayanna at the salvage yard, detectives head to the landfill.
They never found her body there, but they found some items that could have been hers.
They find a book belonging to Terry Parker High School.
But it's hardly enough to charge Jonathan with murder.
Without a body, the police couldn't prove that Ayanna was dead, that she hadn't just ran away from home.
There were different efforts to look, but by the end of December 2018, they had ceased the searches.
Which left Ayanna's family to confront the awful possibility that they may never find her or know what happened.
Everything depends on the detective's strategy of putting informants in jail with Jonathan.
And after several weeks, their plan starts to pay off.
He starts talking about what was going on between him and Ayanna.
What Jonathan says breaks the case wide open.
Why you got abortion?
They wouldn't do it.
He makes some incredibly incriminating statements.
Well, the same day she went missing, same day you go.
And she was dead, man.
Weeks after 16-year-old Ayanna Sawyer went missing in Jacksonville, Florida, detectives have captured her uncle, Jonathan Quiles, talking about the teenager's disappearance.
After arresting Jonathan on charges of sexually assaulting Ayanna's sister, the detectives arranged for him to share a cell with a pair of informants.
The two inmates got him talking, and he spent the next 2 hours on a wire talking about he got his niece pregnant.
I mean, she was supposed to be on birth control.
And if she had the baby, he was afraid their secret would come out.
They could match my DNA or do a DNA for the baby.
He made comments about, I can't let this ruin my family.
He had to take care of her.
So he'd come up with a plan.
He told her that they were gonna run away together and be married and have a better life.
She would have her baby. It would be a happy ending.
Then he picked her up in the middle of the school day under the guise of starting their new life together.
You tell anyone where you're going?
No.
All right, let's do this.
And he drove her to the salvage yard.
She knew where I worked, but that was like the first time she's ever been like that.
What are we doing here?
I just gotta do something real quick.
He took her over to the side where no one can see her.
And he tried to kill her quietly.
He goes, well, I tried to strangle her at first, but I really couldn't stomach it, so I pulled my gun out and I shot her. He surreptitiously did this right under the nose of everybody at his job site.
Then he got rid of the body.
When they asked him on the wire what he did with the body, he said, I wrapped her up in 2 large black plastic bags. I then took a front end loader, scooped her up, drove her to the dumpster, and I tossed her in.
What was in the stuff that got dumped with her body?
Garbage.
He was so nonchalant about the fact that he killed this young girl, dumped her body, and just went on about his day.
He said, oh, she'll end up being buried under somebody's house out there someday. They'll never find her.
They don't have to land. They got me. He would be back to the grave. Well,
you know, if I tell you.
He was cocky. He knew he was gonna get away with this.
She says, no, not child murder. It was with sexual assault.
He didn't think he was gonna get caught.
Instead, he'd given the detectives exactly what they needed.
Reverend Al Sharpton said this to me one time, you know, a fish doesn't get caught until they open their mouth. And that's exactly what just happened. He opened his mouth.
Now that the detectives have him on tape, they haul Jonathan back into the interrogation room and let him know he's caught.
You are being indicted on first-degree murder.
He said on that wire that he'd been planning this for months once he found out she's pregnant.
Detectives also let him know that they found some of his DNA on the laundry they took from Ayanna's room.
With his DNA being on the inside of her underwear, we knew exactly who was involved with this young lady.
We'd like to talk to you if you're willing to speak with us.
I have an attorney that's representing me that she doesn't want me to talk to without her being present.
With Jonathan now refusing to talk, the detectives stopped the interview.
But when Jonathan goes on trial for murder in September of 2023, the prosecutors still have his confession to the jailhouse informants.
That's why that wire became so very important. It confirmed everything that the evidence kept showing us.
But there's still one crucial piece of evidence missing.
We didn't have a body.
Will that be enough for an acquittal?
People wanted to see justice come through for this situation.
A lot of people were so invested into finding out what happened to her.
And no one was more invested than Ayanna's family.
There was about a dozen family members
for Ayanna that were in the courtroom, seeing this case through and supporting each other through it.
It was very hard for the family to have to sit and relive some of the details that they had to hear.
But while Ayanna's family is filled with anxiety about the outcome, Jonathan appears confident.
You'd see him walk into the courtroom with a smug look on his face.
He would have a smile on his face or a smirk. I think he thought he was smarter than everybody else.
The prosecution begins by arguing that while there's no body, there's no doubt that Ayanna is dead.
She was dead.
No one in her family had ever seen her again. No text messages, no phone calls to any family members, to any friends.
Then the prosecutors put Ayanna's sister on the stand to establish the motive behind the murder.
She was going to keep the baby, and clearly that created a problem for Mr. Quilles.
Ayanna's sister testified about the uncle's abuse, including how he forced her to induce a miscarriage.
You have independent witnesses' testimony. You have DNA, his DNA, that links him to her.
The prosecution also has the messages Jonathan exchanged with Ayanna.
The Snapchat messages and the text messages were maybe the hardest thing to see in this trial because it was so telling. You see someone who is actively trying to just take over a young girl.
He thought that he could manipulate any woman that he wanted.
It made my skin crawl.
And most of all, they have Jonathan on tape.
Is that what it was?
For a 33-year-old man, after he's done what he did, to openly, laughingly confess on that wire shows how cold, shows how calculated, shows how driven he was to rid his own selfish life of his problem.
When it's the defense's turn, Jonathan's attorney tries to contain the damage.
The defense argue, well, he's just talking big in the jail. He's just trying to sound big to other inmates.
They also argue that without Ayanna's body, there's nothing to prove that she is dead.
They straight up said in court that Ayanna could be anywhere.
Will it sway the verdict?
It doesn't take the jury long to reach a decision.
It hadn't even been an hour. I think the exact time was about 52 minutes.
They found him guilty of first-degree murder. He got mandatory life in prison.
Jonathan appears surprised by the outcome.
The smugness kind of went away. He seemed a lot more serious once the guilty verdict came down. He thought he was going to get away with it.
It's an emotional moment for Ayanna's family.
I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read out, and I remember Ayanna's family members hunching over in tears.
I hate that it took this long to get this family some type of justice, but justice does prevail.
This person who took this young girl's life is finally going to pay for what he did.
I spoke with them that day. They said what justice is knowing that he's in prison for the rest of his life and that he can't get out and hurt another innocent family like theirs.
But in the end, no amount of prison time can ever replace what Jonathan took from Ayanna and her family.
There will always be this horrible gaping hole for a teenage girl who had a bright future, whose life was cut short.
Ayanna was loved. Ayanna was young, and she deserved so much more than what she got.
She was a young woman adrift.
Her parents had split up.
She was getting involved with the wrong crowd.
Until she met a pastor and his wife.
She looked up to them.
The way that he spoke, it was really captivating.
I want to ask everyone to bow your heads this day, and I want you to consider in your heart, am I ready to meet God?
They became her surrogate family.
She was accepted and loved.
Then she disappeared.
No one had spoken to her in weeks.
Something just didn't seem right.
There was some blood in the house.
We were dealing with a homicide.
This was almost the perfect murder.
Until the search for answers reveals the scandalous secret behind it all.
This will get very complicated.
I don't think anyone would have suspected.
This isn't stuff you see in normal everyday life.
It's something that's been ingrained and embedded in her.
For lack of a better term, he recruited her.
Fine.
California's southernmost city.
San Diego's a beautiful city, full of sunshine, pretty much 12 months around.
It's world-renowned for its pristine beaches.
We have access to the ocean, the desert, the mountains, all within an hour and a half away.
But even in the most idyllic places, things can go wrong.
Excuse me, how to report someone that's missing?
Kimberly is friends with Joy Risker, and she hasn't heard from her in a couple of weeks.
When's the last time you've been in contact with this person?
Well, she sent me this strange email.
The email that Kimberly received said that Joy was going to do some traveling for a while. But it wasn't like Joy to take off like that.
According to Kimberly, that wasn't the only thing about the email that seemed off.
Kimberly claims that the tone of the email really didn't sound like the Joy that she knew.
Joy had written that she was feeling very dissatisfied with her lifestyle.
She said she just wanted to take some alone time.
And this didn't seem right to you?
Absolutely not.
She's a mom. She absolutely adored her little boys.
She would never leave without taking her kids with her.
Something's wrong. I know
it. 25-year-old Joy Risker could light up a room.
Joy was an amazing young woman, great personality, very outgoing, effervescent.
People wanted to interact with her. Her smile was magnetic. She was sincere. She was authentic.
But she'd known some dark times in her young life.
Her parents divorced when she was young.
And the divorce was especially tough on Joy.
Joy's mother was dismayed to see that her teenage daughter started to get involved with a very rebellious crowd.
She was partying, hanging out all night.
Hoping to set Joy straight, her mother encouraged her daughter to get more involved in their church.
If she could get Joy into church, she would be surrounded by the right kinds of people.
People like the church's popular youth pastor, 26-year-old Sean Goff.
It is absolutely wonderful to have you all here tonight at Bible study.
John was this charismatic person. The way that he spoke to the congregation was really captivating.
Regardless of your church membership, regardless of your record for giving, regardless of your family situation, or your socioeconomic level, God still desires to have a relationship with you.
He was known to be an all-around good guy. Nice, kind, charismatic, trustworthy.
Sean was maybe a fatherly presence, something that she had been missing. She felt like she finally found a place where she was accepted and loved.
Over time, Joy became close to both the youth pastor and his wife, Teresa.
The couple really became Joy's sort of found family.
She started spending more and more time with the couple.
She enjoyed her time with Sean and Teresa, so much so that at a certain point, she moved in with them and decided to be a nanny for Teresa's baby.
Joy also worked in the church office as Sean's personal assistant.
It sounded like almost a perfect situation of like one step out of the house to be able to build her own independent life.
Joy, now 18, was blossoming into a beautiful young woman.
Shortly after moving in with the Goffs, Joy told her family and friends that she started dating a traveling pastor.
Hey, what's got you smiling so big? It's just Isaiah. He asked for my number last time he was here, and we've been talking ever since.
This pastor often preached at Sean's church, and they fell in love.
Soon, Joy was telling everyone they were engaged.
Shortly after announcing their engagement in 2000, Joy welcomed their first son.
And 2 years later, she gave birth to another little boy.
Her friends are excited and happy for her. She's got these 2 kids. You know, she's in love.
But now Joy has left her 2 kids behind and supposedly gone off for a little me time.
At least, that's what she said in an email that several friends received.
Her friends did feel like this was odd, but when they kind of pushed back and wanted to know more, she just kind of said, hey, I would rather be left alone.
You think something happened to her?
Yes. Because her friend says Joy has been considering getting away from someone.
Only it wasn't her kids.
According to her friend, Joy had been considering leaving the father of her children.
Okay, who's the father?
Well, that's the weird part.
Joy had told people that the father of her kids was a traveling pastor who sometimes preached at her friend Sean Goff's church.
But actually, the father of her children was Sean.
25-year-old Joy Risker had spent the last 7 years living with Pastor Sean Goff and his wife, Teresa.
Joy moved in with Sean at the age of 18.
She was going to help take care of the couple's newborn baby.
Over the next 7 years, Joy had 2 children of her own.
She told family and friends that the father was a traveling pastor who regularly preached at Sean's church.
But according to her friend Kimberly, Joy has been living a lie.
She shared with the police that Joy was not, in fact, involved with the traveling pastor.
Sean was actually the father of her 2 little boys.
And they're having an affair?
Not exactly.
Sean, Teresa, and Joy were engaged in a polygamous relationship.
He's married to the both of them.
Okay.
Sean Goff used his position as the youth pastor to work his way into her life.
You know I love you, right?
I don't think anyone would have suspected that she was being groomed by this charismatic youth pastor.
Least of all, Joy.
Joy was young, she was naive.
She agreed to marry him, and they then ended up living together with Sean Goff's first wife and had 2 children with him.
And she told her friends and family that the father was someone else.
They believed her because she was a trustworthy person.
And they had no reason to suspect the pastor and his wife.
They're just decent folks living next door.
I suspect that Sean didn't want the public to know, and she didn't want anyone to judge her, I imagine.
But according to her friend Kimberly, Joy had recently told her the truth.
She's beginning to realize that this is not all of what she thought it was going to be.
She just wasn't in love with Sean the way she used to be.
She had hopes of going to school, having a career, and he didn't really support her dreams.
But Joy was working to earn enough money so that she could split away from Sean and take her kids with her.
Which is what made her friends suspicious about Joy's sudden disappearance.
Joy seemed really confident about the future and putting her plans into play.
Leaving without the kids was never part of the plan.
Something just didn't seem right.
Kimberly says she was so concerned that she'd called Sean.
She said that Sean had informed her that he too had gotten emails from her.
And Sean had essentially given Kimberly the same exact story that she had received from Joy's email.
She said that she'd left and wanted to do some traveling to just kind of figure out what she wanted to do with her life.
It was after talking to Sean that Kimberly decided to contact the police.
I just want to make sure she's okay.
After Joy's friend files the missing persons report, detectives pay a visit to the home of Sean and Teresa Goff.
It was essentially a welfare check to see what the Goffs knew about Joy's sudden disappearance.
Sean is more than willing to talk to them. He's very matter-of-fact about his relationship with both women.
You can see how that raises some concerns.
Certainly.
He's very much aware that multiple marriages are not legal in the United States.
But he expresses how a lot of the ancient patriarchs from the Bible also had multiple wives. And even though it was illegal, he felt that, biblically speaking, he was within his rights to do that.
And Teresa, she's all right with that?
Well,
he says that Teresa was reluctant at first.
But Sean convinced her that this was the right thing.
Over time, she came to understand that Sean's love for Joy called him to marry her as well.
And Teresa's understanding only grew once Joy gave birth to Sean's children.
He says the 6 of them all became one happy family.
So what happened?
well, it all started when Joy's mother died.
As a result, he says that she fell into a deep depression.
He said she tried to hold it together for the sake of the children.
But she was growing increasingly unhappy, and he knew she was thinking about leaving him.
I just never thought she'd do it like this.
She had run off and left him with her 2 kids.
But he says that isn't the most surprising part.
According to Sean, she had left to go be with an ex-boyfriend.
About the disappearance of his wife, Joy Risker. Pastor Sean Goff says the 25-year-old mother of 2 has left town to reunite with a former boyfriend.
I still can't believe she left like that.
This man was very distraught about losing his wife.
And he was completely shocked when he learned that she was leaving to go back to an ex-boyfriend.
His name is Joel Hoffman.
Apparently, he lives in Boston.
But according to the email Sean received, they were leaving for Europe soon.
And she told me she needed some time to think.
She told you this?
Yes, over the phone.
Sean says that they've talked a few times since then and that she seems happy.
Can we see the email?
But Sean admits that he's not happy about the situation.
She had run off and left him with her 2 kids, and he was now exploring hiring an attorney.
But he's hoping that they'll figure out what would be the best for him, her, and their boys.
Is your wife home? Your other wife?
Oh, yeah, she's upstairs with the boys. I'll go get her.
When the detectives follow up with Sean's wife, Teresa, she backs up the pastor's account.
She did know that there was some trouble within the marriage.
It was no secret that Joy wasn't happy.
She accepted that she wanted out of this relationship.
Can you tell us about your relationship?
Well, I guess it is a little unusual.
I found her to be very open, very frank. She explained to me the nature of their relationship and gave me excellent background information.
She told detectives that she was only 15 years old when she met Sean at a church. They got married when she was only 17.
It sounded a lot like how Sean and Joy met.
How do you feel about Sean and Joy?
Well, I didn't like the idea at first, but I couldn't go against Sean.
Teresa says that she has a very strong faith in God and respects the man as the head of the household.
Because she trusted Sean, she eventually was more open to having Joy join the relationship.
Teresa also says that she came to love having Joy in the family.
She's like a sister to me.
They got along very well.
But Teresa admitted that she was a little surprised at how Joy just up and left.
Have you
talked to Joy since she left?
No, but Sean has.
Teresa says that according to Sean, Joy is happy and she's doing well.
Sean and Teresa's story appears to explain Joy's sudden absence.
We don't really have a missing person here. We have a woman that's abandoned her children.
Hoping to settle the matter once and for all, the detectives reach out to Joel Hoffman, the man Joy had supposedly gone off to see.
Hello?
He said, yes, I know Joy Risker.
Yeah?
He was in a relationship with Joy in their teens.
And have you heard from her lately? Yeah?
He said, yes, I've had an email exchange with her 5-6 months ago.
And did she come out to Boston to see you? No, I haven't seen her in forever.
He said that he maybe had spoke to her a couple months before to kind of catch up, but he had not seen her.
And according to Joel, they had no plans to run off traveling together.
He said, I don't know anything about going to Europe. I have never discussed it with her, and I haven't seen her in years.
He was utterly confused by what the police were asking him.
What's going on? Is there something wrong? Well, she's disappeared, and we heard she might have gone to see you. Seriously?
He had no idea that she was missing, that she was gone.
At least, that's what Joel claimed.
The conversation only leaves detectives with unanswered questions.
Someone is lying. Now, the question is, who?
Had Joy actually gone to Boston to see Joel?
Maybe something bad had happened between them.
Maybe Sean was lying about the whole trip to Boston.
Or was it Joy who lied to Sean?
Joy really wanted to get away from the relationship.
Maybe Joy used the whole trip as a cover story just so she could break from Sean.
Looking for answers, investigators subpoena Joy's phone records.
And that's where they got their first hint that something was seriously wrong.
The last calls that were made or received on that phone were on September the 19th.
That was almost 2 weeks before Joy was reported as a missing person.
And the timing of the calls isn't the only thing that raises suspicion.
That last call that was made on September 19th was made to Sean.
Investigating Joy Risker's disappearance have just learned that her last phone call was on September 19th, 2 weeks before a friend reported her missing.
The call log indicates that the last call Joy made was September 19th.
And that call was made to Sean Goff.
Sean's the man she's been in a polygamous relationship with for the last 6 years.
And it was very suspicious, and things were not adding up.
That afternoon, the detectives asked Sean to come in and answer a few more questions.
He was very calm and collected.
Sean admits, yes, September 19th was the last time he talked to Joy on the phone.
He had called her to arrange a special date night for the two of them.
That was basically his last-ditch effort to try and work through some of the problems that were plaguing their relationship.
I wanted it to be perfect.
Thank you. He had asked Teresa to take the kids and go out of town.
I'm glad we finally get some alone time together.
Sean made a romantic dinner in his attempts to really mend and repair the relationship with Joy.
But according to Sean, Joy had other plans.
Sean says that during that dinner, Joy actually expressed a desire to move to LA. She says she wanted to rent a condo and attend makeup school.
What do you think?
Joy, I don't know.
Financially, there was tensions on renting a condo.
His alternative was to encourage her to stay with a friend that lived in LA, But Joy was not having that.
Why is it always what you want?
They couldn't come to an amicable agreement, and so they decided to sleep on it.
Fine.
But Sean says that conversation never happened.
A few hours after going to bed, Sean says that he heard a noise outside of their bedroom window. And he looked out and saw Joy putting 2 suitcases in the back of an SUV.
Any idea who was driving?
No. He says he didn't recognize the vehicle.
He did not get a license plate.
And after Joy loaded her luggage in the back, she got into the passenger side and the SUV drove off.
According to Sean, that was the last time he saw Joy.
And his last contact with her was the email that she sent soon thereafter.
Sean's new story would explain Joy's disappearance, if it's true.
The police felt suspicious of Sean.
Sending Teresa and the kids away, the mysterious SUV in the middle of the night, the whole thing seemed fishy.
But it's hardly concrete evidence that Sean had something to do with Joy's disappearance.
All the detectives really have is a hunch.
But by this point, word of Joy's disappearance has started to spread.
And it wasn't long after this that detectives received a phone call from an old friend of Sean's.
His name is Leaf Wright.
Leaf says he's known Sean for a long time.
This friend described Sean as being incredibly arrogant and incredibly controlling. One of the examples was that he had begun to write a self-help book entitled, "If I Can Satisfy 2 Women, Why Can't You Please One?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's Sean.
Leaf felt that Sean had some rather antiquated views about women. Sean felt that women couldn't survive without the leadership of men.
And because of this mindset, he says that Sean tended to have relationships with very young women.
They would be more receptive to his exertion of power.
Women like Joy and Teresa.
Sean met both Teresa and Joy when they were underage.
And they were both still teenagers when he wedded them.
It was classic grooming behavior.
He used the Bible to control and manipulate these women into thinking that this was God's way.
Told him it was going to get him in trouble.
But Sean says that he wasn't in the wrong.
But according to Leaf, Sean did eventually run into trouble with Joy.
Leaf said that recently Sean had started to complain about Joy.
He said she was being difficult.
She wanted to get out of the house, have some freedom.
Her attitude was poor, according to him. And the way he described it, she either needed to shape up or she was going to be shipped out.
He said that he was thinking about getting rid of her.
What did he mean by get rid of her?
I'm not sure.
It was a compelling statement, but it is a long way from proof that Sean actually did something to Joy.
Instead, the proof comes from a surprising source.
On October 21st, Sean walked into the San Diego Police Department and asked to speak to detectives.
The detectives pulled Sean into an interrogation room.
Did you have a seat there, Sean?
Then once the detectives read Sean his rights, he then told them why he was there.
I came down here to turn myself in.
Okay.
Because I killed Joy Risker.
What happened on all this?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, well, Joy and I were incompatible. We were, we've been talking about splitting up.
When investigators press for details about Joy's death, Sean hesitates.
I don't want to get myself into, I don't know.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Sean. I mean, you've come down and you turned yourself in for murder.
Right.
So, I mean...
For killing someone.
Right.
He was careful to use the word killed and not murdered.
I think he was guarding what he wanted to say in preparation of what kind of defense he was later going to run.
Then, 10 minutes into the interview, Sean shuts things down completely.
I think I'd rather talk to the attorney.
The detectives tried to press Sean in hopes that he would reveal the location of Joy's body.
So you want to leave her out there? That's fine. Whatever you want to do. I mean, she was your...
I know.
I mean, if that's the way you want to leave it.
I think that would be wise.
And the interview was stopped at that point.
But Sean wasn't free to go.
Sean's semi-confession is enough for them to take him into custody while they continue their investigation.
But before they can even consider charging him with murder, they're going to need a lot more evidence.
In order to prove murder, you have to prove that there was a killing of another with malice aforethought without self-defense.
So with Sean in custody, the detectives bring his first wife, Teresa, in for another interview.
I was a little suspicious. I mean, we have a woman that's conveniently out of town. She's got the kids. Does she know what was going on?
At first, Teresa's story mirrors what she and Sean previously told the detectives.
She'd taken the kids to Santa Barbara to allow Sean and Joy some time alone.
And Sean called me the next day and said that Joy was gone, but she left.
He had told her that they had gotten into a fight and that Joy had decided she was going to leave.
However, this time, Teresa says that isn't all that Sean had told her.
He says that during their argument, Joy cut herself.
They say how?
Well, he said that she had done it.
He had told her that she had wanted to hurt herself and that he had had to stop her.
He says that he needed to take Joy to the hospital and then afterwards take her to wherever she was going to be staying.
He'd also asked Teresa to do him a favor.
Sean said, "There's going to be blood in the house, so I need you to clean it up when you get home."
Teresa, always the dutiful wife, had done as she'd been told.
She did find some blood in Joy's room and in the bath, so she cleaned it up.
And Sean didn't come home till the next day.
When he did, his SUV was filthy.
There was dirt all over it, inside it, too.
According to Teresa, Sean was just as dirty.
He said that he had gone up to Big Bear and built a pyramid.
Pyramid?
That's what he said.
She thought that was odd, but again, she had no reason to suspect that Joy was harmed at this point.
However, she does admit that Sean wasn't himself for the next several weeks.
He would stay in bed all day and ask her to pray for him.
Teresa felt like maybe he was mourning the relationship.
By the end of the interview, the detectives are convinced that Teresa had no idea that Joy was dead.
She'd been married to this man since she was only a teenager. She was groomed. So I'm not surprised that she asked no questions.
And when investigators finally tell Teresa that Sean admitted to killing Joy, she reacts with genuine emotion.
Sean said that?
Yes.
No, that's impossible.
She described her relationship with Joy with tears in her eyes.
So Teresa gives detectives permission to search the home she and Joy shared with Sean.
We were able to locate blood in one of the bedrooms and some blood in the main bathroom. At that point, I called our crime lab.
A search of the house with luminol revealed there was blood.
When you spray luminol on a surface, the blood fluoresces, and there was blood everywhere.
We found blood in various parts of the house, consistent with some kind of struggle, and then in the bathroom, it appeared that's where the fight ended.
The entire bathroom lit up like a Christmas tree.
And when detectives returned to the station to search Sean's computer, It's clear he sent the emails allegedly from Joy.
Sean had had access to her emails. He was posing as Joy to throw people off course.
The search history on his computer was equally damning.
How to get away with murder, how to commit a perfect murder, how to dispose of a body.
At that point, we were dealing with a homicide, and this was very much pre-planned.
But the detectives are no closer to finding Joy's body.
Sean originally told Teresa that he went to Big Bear Lake to build this pyramid. So the police went to Big Bear Lake and were unable to find a pyramid.
Because the detectives were looking in the wrong state. It's New Year's Eve, 2003, almost 4 months after Joy disappeared, and 2 men are hiking through the hills west of Phoenix, Arizona.
They came across what looked like a mound of rocks.
It's like a pyramid.
They could smell the undeniable stench of death.
But it was also a tomb.
4 months after Joy Risker disappeared, a couple of hikers have made a gruesome discovery in the hills west of Phoenix, Arizona.
They stumbled across a bunch of rocks that were piled up like some sort of pyramid.
And they noticed a very foul odor coming from that.
So they alerted the authorities. And when the authorities arrived, they found the badly decomposed body of a woman.
Charlie 23. I've got human remains out here.
There was some hair that was remaining. The bones around the face had all been crushed.
She was obliterated beyond all recognition.
The remains are taken to the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office, where the autopsy reveals just how violent her death was.
They found 7 stab wounds to the sternum area. There were another 5 stab wounds higher in the chest.
There was an effort to obscure her identity.
Her face had been crushed so she couldn't be recognizable.
All of the fingertips had been cut off, and the teeth had all been cut out.
But despite the killer's efforts, the medical examiner is able to identify the remains.
They were able to extract DNA from some of the bones.
It was entered into the CODIS database, and we got a hit.
The DNA is a match for 25-year-old Joy Risker.
We now had her body and knew a little bit more about what had happened to her.
It's more than enough to charge Sean with murder.
Once we had her body, that confirmed everything we knew. We sent it over to the district attorney's office. They concurred and they filed murder charges.
And the story made headlines.
The polygamy aspect of this case is very sensational. Both Teresa and Joy were very young women. They were sucked in by a religious man who used his power and influence to convince them that the way they were living was the right thing to do.
When Sean goes on trial in June of 2006, Sean's long-term control over the 2 women is a key component of the case.
Sean groomed these women, and the prosecutors believe that Joy no longer wanted to be with him and wanted to leave him and take her 2 children. And he was willing to murder this woman instead of just letting her go.
According to the prosecutors, there's little doubt the crime was premeditated.
Sean set up for Teresa to take all 3 kids out of town to ensure that no one was in the house.
Joy. I don't know why you sent them away. Doesn't change anything.
I just thought we could try one last time.
I'm done trying.
Well, that's too bad.
According to prosecutors, Sean fatally stabbed Joy.
He did it a minimum of 16 times in different places of the body.
If he couldn't have her, then no one could.
Then he dragged her body into the bathroom.
He sawed out her teeth and her fingertips in an effort to obscure her identity. Then he drove 400 miles to Arizona and hid her body under a pile of rocks.
When it's the defense's turn, they put Sean on the stand.
Sean said after he and Joy had their romantic dinner, they had gotten into an argument.
Don't walk away from me!
Joy, just let it go!
And that it was Joy who initiated the fight and pulled the knife out.
He, in an effort to try and keep her from stabbing him, grabbed the knife and accidentally stabbed her. And then he panicked because he thought that the police wouldn't believe his self-defense story.
And he decided to cover the whole thing up.
Will Sean's latest story be enough to sway the jury?
They find Sean guilty of murder.
The evidence in this case was overwhelming. Couple that with Sean's lies, there was just no way around it.
He is sentenced to 26 years to life in prison with possibility of parole.
I'm hopeful that his parole will be denied. I think his track record of dishonesty and violence is such that he would be a dangerous person to let out.
A lack of remorse, a lack of guilt, lack of regret, feeling untouchable. It speaks to that narcissistic trait, this need for recognition and admiration from the people he mentored when he was merely manipulating them.
Here was a young woman just looking for something to fill a void in her life, sucked in by a charismatic but controlling man.
She was a decent young woman who got preyed on by a man far older than her. But as she matured as a woman, she actually broke his spell. I'm going to take my kids, I'm going to move on. And her will to grow as a person, unfortunately, brought about her demise. But you have to admire that will.
She was a beautiful, free-spirited, amazing woman. And I think that's important to remember.